Friends, good morning and welcome to Christ Memorial Church. If I haven't had the opportunity to greet you this morning, I welcome you. My name is Jill Versteg, and I have the joy of serving at Evergreen Commons as president and CEO. And I'm just incredibly grateful to see many of your faces. I know many of you, and so it's just a joy to greet you this morning. If you're not sure where you've landed, this is part 2 of 3 of our series called Aging in Place. And so we are partnered today with Anchor In-Home Care and are super delighted to be collaborators with them. Together, we really seek to inspire older adults to live their fullest life. And we seek to do that really in the name of Jesus. And so what that means is that everyone we serve is a beloved child of God who is called to old age, and we delight to wrap our arms around each one of you and your family members as you take your next faithful step in this chapter. And so we, in the spirit of Jesus, wholeheartedly welcome you. Today we have Rollin and we have Alyssa, Suzanne, and Michael who are here. They will present this part 2. If you weren't here last week and are curious to watch the presentation online, simply let us know that, and we would be happy to email you that presentation. Before Rollin and Alyssa start, would you pray with me, please? Living God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we give you thanks this day, ultimately for the life that we have in Jesus, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. God, I bless you for each person in this room and all that you have made them to be. And I pray, Lord, that you would quiet any fretfulness, curb our anxiety, so that we might hear from you today. Use Anchor In-Home, use Evergreen Commons, use these trusted relationships, Lord, to ultimately further your kingdom, to bear fruit, to experience Jesus. Thanks so much for every person in this room. Go with them today. In the name of Christ, amen. All right, friends.
Awesome. Well, yes, like Jill said, my name's Alyssa. I work at Evergreen Commons. I'm the caregiver support coordinator. So I'm stationed kind of at our second campus at the day center. But something that I get to do is just walk alongside those emotional and support needs of our members and our caregivers, whether it's across the board at the day center or at our main campus. A little bit about me, I got to go to Michigan State University. I know that can be polarizing, so don't hate me, but do love me if you are a Spartan. And I got to graduate in a pretty broad degree in social science called Interdisciplinary Sciences in Health and our community. So really just got to be able to take classes, social science classes, about how we can walk alongside those that need health support services, but in our community. So that's a little bit about me. Worked in skilled nursing, in life enrichment, social services, and now I've been at Evergreen for 7.5 years. October gets to be 8, so I get to celebrate my Evergreen birthday soon, which is really exciting. But yeah, we'll kind of just jump right in. So a big thing that you guys talked about last week is even what is aging in place. And one of the big things that we think about is just the fact of life. Guys, we do age. And so there is this study, we can go to the next slide, that there was this article in Christianity Today that came out that actually one of our participants at the day center shared with us, and we got to share with our staff through an all-staff meeting. But it was by Jen Wilkin, if you ever heard of her. And she talked about the chiasms of life. And I know that maybe the short Suzanne who talked last week might have mentioned this same chiasm and parabola that we get to live. But what it starts is we start at infancy, at childhood, and we grow and we go up and we hit that middle age. And then unfortunately or fortunately, we get to start embracing the down curve. And with that comes different elements of how we give and receive care. And something, though, is that symmetry in life, we often cling really tightly to that first half. As we're gaining our symmetry, going up, we're working so hard on what we can attain, what we're learning, what we're growing, what we've done, that when we start to hit that down curve, it hits us really hard. But the reality is that's a natural part of life. We're aging, we're gonna hit that down curve, and the hardest thing sometimes is embracing it and accepting help. If we think about those early stages of our life, we're so willing to give help, to offer services, to support the people we're walking alongside. One of the harder things is to accept the help and accept the care. And so that's kind of why Rollin and I are here today. Rollin's going to talk about that formal support and care on that downturn of life, and I'm going to talk about more of that emotional support and care that is needed as we go. But really, the big thing is, and if you can look, there's some statistics about why we might need that. So as we enter in that other stage of our life, the aging stage, the precious stage, where we get to have the wisdom that we gleaned throughout it, it might also come with things because of a deteriorating ability to be as independent as possible, or just a lack of social connection. As we age, we start to lose some relationships that we held so closely. And so we need to make sure that we're kind of filling that up. And so when we look at it as we age, there is a need for community support. There's going to be a need for purpose that becomes even more important. Social isolation is going to increase as we age. We're going to have shared experiences that we need to have. And Rollin will talk about the importance of that in a couple slides as well. But then there's the added thing, unfortunately, 60% of seniors are going to live with a chronic illness. So not only are we just getting older and have the natural part of aging, there might also be other complications that come in that means that we need more support. And so I'm just kind of shooting it to you straight so you can understand the gravity of why it's important to have the support in your life. Whether that's due to just general aging, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, Parkinson's, these other chronic illnesses that will be with you towards the end of life, and why we need that support there. So those are kind of the big things when we think about that. And then, Rollin, if you want to go ahead a couple slides. Do we have a clicker thing? There you go. Yeah, so that's a big thing. We need that human connection because it fuels our purpose. But Rollin's going to talk about the importance and benefits of what it means to stay at home through that time period. So you can go.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here. My name's Rollin Smith. I'm the executive director with Anchor In-Home Care. It is just a joy to be and a privilege to be in front of you, just talking about this aging in place process. What does it look like? What are some of the resources in the community that we can leverage and use to our advantage, and simply try to make that process a little bit more comfortable? And it's all about education and talking about what these opportunities could look like. So really pleased, and again, honored to be here, honored to be invited by Evergreen. We're so missionally aligned with keeping our seniors home and thriving, dignified, and out of isolation. And so again, can't thank you enough for having us come alongside you today. So the reality is, guys, the world's changed a lot since the pandemic. And I think even more so, there's motivation to stay home, be in your place of comfort. And just a general poll, who here wants to age in place? Who here wants to stay at home, right? All right, overwhelming. That was kind of a question I knew the answer to already. So why we're here, can we want to talk about, can we go to the next slide by chance? 90% of seniors want to stay in homes. I got even a higher 90% when we just reached out to the crowd. Aging in place leads to a longer life, more happiness, stronger and better community ties, better quality of life. And these are statistics that have been derived from a lot of studies, and it's directly correlated to longevity. Again, quality of life, and so we're going to try and enable that the best we can through these resources. And why do we want to do this? Because our home is our sanctuary. It's where our pets are. It's where our memories are. It's where our family was raised. And so making your own choices in your home is not just smart with the right support. It's practical. It's affordable. And it should be the general desire for most people that want to stay at home. So if possible, could we go to the next slide? Okay, so when you're at home, you're comfortable, you're in control. There's familiar surroundings, it's a less stress environment, fewer hospital visits, higher satisfaction and safety. Stay close to your friends, neighbors, your routine, and preserve a level of independence. And so, yeah, can we go to the next slide by chance? what I want to talk about is kind of this collaboration of different services that you have at your disposal. And one of the things about aging, particularly in this post-pandemic, this modern environment, we have this silver wave coming, right? And so what that means is there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for innovation. And so there's been things that are new and that are out there that myself, I haven't been apprised of. And I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I've worked in acute, post-acute care environments, facilities, and now I'm in home care. And it's really polarizing, even when working sometimes with professionals in healthcare, physicians, doctors, lawyers, who may not be attuned to exactly, again, what is out there in this modern age. You know, aging 30 years ago, you thought of more of a clinical, institutional approach. Maybe you think of somebody like a Nurse Ratched, if you've seen that movie, right? And that just simply isn't the environment, you know, anymore, or the concept we have to entertain. So, yeah, sorry about that. I just had a little blank what I was thinking. So what I wanted to do, though, is give kudos to you guys for being here, being educated, wanting to know what's out there, because, again, there's things that are technological advancements. There's alert systems in your home. There's ways to have telecommunication with family, with providers. And there's kind of new channels within support services at home, kind of like an anchor or an in-home care or a hospice and palliative care. And I'm going to kind of go through some of those general four big opportunities you may have at home. And they may seem daunting, but they don't have to be, right? And it's definitely something that you should explore, you know, in conjunction with, again, all the things that I mentioned before, outlets like Evergreen Commons. Being able to thrive, stay not isolated, use it or lose it is really the mentality. Can we go to the next slide? So there's four big ones that I like to talk about. One's going to be in-home care, home health, hospice, and palliative care. And these are all interconnected and can work together if you reach those junctions in your life. So home health is often confused with in-home care. Home health is a doctor's ordered, it's covered by Medicare, usually a short-term visit. Includes nursing, wound care, medication management, physical, occupational, speech therapy. They come to your home, and this is usually more for like healing or restorative services. These are not usually long-term ongoing. They're not daily supports, if you will, but they're usually something that you will acquire post-hospitalization, a doctor's script. But even if it's not a post-hospitalization, if you have a chronic disease or if you have anything chronic or ailments, you can request a home health eval and see if you qualify. Again, these are benefits you've paid into your whole life, and why not take advantage of some of these things that could make life a little bit more comfortable at home? Can we go to the next slide? Non-medical in-home care. So that's who I represent. That's what we do. And so this is a private pay. Sometimes insurance can cover it with long-term care insurance. I am seeing some more mainstream insurance provider offering some capacity of benefit to cover in-home care. But this is personalized. This is one-on-one. This is a capacity where we can come in a few hours a day, and we can come in 24 hours a day. We can provide assistance with bathing, grooming, dressing, escorting, hygiene, you know, laundry. You can provide transportation. And so truly, when you compound all those opportunities, a lot of the things that you might be looking in a long-term care environment or like a long-term care facility and assisted living, those can be brought to your home. There's also a significant cost efficacy that I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. But this is the ultimate flex of schedule. Some people just need a little bit of help in the morning. Some people need just a little bit of help in the evening. And oftentimes, again, traditional medicine or the traditional mindset was, well, if you need some help, you got to go to a long-term care facility, or that was kind of an instinctive approach to aging. And so nowadays, if you just need a little help with medication management, great. Or if your loved one just needs a little oversight and help getting to bed at night, great. We have clients that we care for 3 hours once a month. You know, companionship or just light housekeeping, meal prep, peace of mind for spouses or adult children. And then we have clients we take care of 24/7, 365, and they could be paraplegic and everything in between. And so the spectrum's broad when it comes to non-medical in-home care. We can do most things, or non-medical home cares can do most things that some home health can, but we can't utilize life-sustaining or resuscitative devices. We can't do wound care and some of those little bit more intensive acute services. But oftentimes, if you have an acute need, you can still bring in home care along in next to home health. And then you have a kind of a complete package to what some may instinctively think you can only find in skilled nursing or in a long-term care environment. Can we please go to the next slide? Thank you. And then we have something called palliative care. Just to raise of hands, is anybody familiar with palliative care here? Had a loved one go through it? Okay, that's kind of what I was expecting, a much lower percentage than may have heard of something like a hospice care. And so palliative care, in my humble opinion, is something that, everybody should potentially look at some junction in their life. You can get an order from your physician. It truly is just comfort keeping. This is an opportunity, kind of like a precursor, perhaps to hospice, but not necessarily. It's ongoing treatment. It's an opportunity sometimes to have a physician look at, I've had circumstances where a client might have had a cardiologist not talking to their primary care provider, and there's medications that just aren't working together or shouldn't be working together. And so it just is an extra layer of oversight. Again, it's a benefit that you've paid into. It's covered traditionally by Medicare or your supplemental. They're still coming to your home. And again, you're getting things that you may have instinctively thought were only available traveling to a doctor's office or a hospital or something to that regard. So I'm a proponent of if you have even a mild chronic disease or mild something, even dementia, Alzheimer's, mild intermediate cognitive impairment, if you have a loved one that unfortunately has that adversity, I don't think there's any reason why you should hesitate to call them. It's just extra oversight, come to your home a couple times a week, certainly more frequent than a physician would. You get a nurse that comes to your home, and so it's just extra TLC. And if you don't qualify, all the better, but it certainly shouldn't be a hesitation to look into that. I'm sure everyone's experienced hospice with a loved one or a friend at some junction, a little bit more aware of what that might look like, but really it's just comfort keeping. It's keeping that dignity, keeping that loved one at peace. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end or it's imminent. I've seen people in hospice for several years at a time. I've seen people graduate from hospice. And it's still, it's a service that comes to your home. It is something that you could actually graduate from, but it's one of those daunting things I think people just inevitably think, this is the end. It's almost like a giving up scenario, and it doesn't mean that you are perhaps giving up. And more than anything, it's also it's a support not only for the loved one, but it's also the family and how you navigate that. I was even talking with a colleague just before I came up here that even in my own life, I have some in-laws right now that are going through hospice, and despite I've been doing this 20 years and working in acute, post-acute care, working in home care, it still feels like the first time, right? And so when you're going through it yourself, there are resources that I know are available that I wouldn't have anticipated I needed to use, and we're using them. And so, again, I just, for yourself, for your loved ones, if you know somebody on hospice, maybe have that conversation, maybe have that consult, because usually when somebody does enter hospice, it's something they maybe wish they'd done a little bit earlier. I would say all 4 of these opportunities are things that I've seen people say, I really just wish I might have looked at this a little bit earlier, not waited till like a critical mass scenario when maybe these opportunities to stay at home aren't there anymore. And that's not not be intimidating or anything like that, but generally speaking, the seniors I work with or I see and generational are rigorous, they're independent, and not always the best patients. And so, have that willingness to maybe just explore those conversations. It's not for you, for your family as well. And we can go to the next slide. So I want to talk about cost effectiveness. And there's been a lot of changes post-pandemic on the cost structure in healthcare. You probably have all been apprised. You've seen medications go up. You've seen bills increase. And so one of the primary things I've noticed is that long-term care facilities have continuously gone up in cost post-pandemic, almost to a point where, we're seeing that people are staying in their homes longer. You're seeing a higher acuity in facilities than ever before, but also compounded with a cost. And I'm not down on facilities. I'm not anti-facility. I was there a very long time in my career, in my life, and I had wonderful experiences. There's a time and place for everything. There is times when, simply support at home will not suffice. But what I did see oftentimes, and as I mentioned earlier, was kind of a premature placement sometimes in memory care or in a long-term care facility because, again, the diligence to do up front is so critical when it comes to this sort of situation. Look, I don't think anybody's staying up at night when they're bored looking at long-term care facilities or home cares. I'm certainly not. Aging kind of has a little bit of a head in the sand mentality. A lot of calls I get are when people are in the hospital and they have to make a really difficult long-term life decision. And they're given a list of places to look at or a list of home cares to look at, and you got to make a significant life decision in that moment. So again, kudos for being here today so that you can kind of preemptively get some education on what that might look like. But you want to be prepared. And so when you're looking at the cost structure of where things are at today, home-based care or services you can bring into the home can give you a significantly more attention and capacity to take care of what you need at home from a healthcare perspective. So, and these numbers are actually a little low. Home-based care, $30, $35 an hour. In this community, it's about $40. And if you go to some major cities, it's $45 or $50 an hour. And the facility care, that is accurate in this community, but if you go to larger cities, sometimes it's $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a month now. And so I brought my calculator a little bit before I started this, and in fact, sometimes that's up to 9 hours of one-on-one care a day from a home care provider and some others. You're staying in your home, you're letting that home continue to build equity. I think homes have gained a little bit of equity around here in the last few years. And so it's just an opportunity, again, to stretch those dollars. When you are in a facility environment, you're a resident, but there's maybe 2 or 3 care staff on the floor and maybe 8 to 10 other residents. And so how many hours of true care do you get? Maybe an hour or 2, you hit the call button and they come and take care of you. And that certainly is sufficient and does work. But this mind, body, soul, spirit approach to one-on-one care, that goal orientation, that level of servitude that you can get with home care is certainly something to consider when you're weighing both options. But more so, I'm a big encourager of just dip your toe in the water with maybe some of these services before you make that leap into an environment. Because once you usually go to a long-term care facility, it's 2 or 3 times as hard to maybe come out of that environment and come back home. So happy to talk about this with you at length a little bit afterwards if you would like, but it is polarizing when you look at the cost structure and again, how you can stretch those dollars. A lot of people just need a couple hours of help a day, and that'd be a significant stretch and how you can afford aging in place. So can we go to the next slide? I think that's you, my friend.
So Roland just spent a good amount of time of just educating us on what those formal assistance will look like to help us age in place and what it looks like to have caregivers come in the home under that paid professional formal care. With walking alongside and having somebody come in to help assist us in the formal setting, often that means that there's an informal care happening as well. So how many of you guys, raise of hands, have cared for a friend, a family member at some point in your journey? Yeah. And how many of you got paid for that? Awesome. That's exactly the stat that we want to look at as well, is that there are informal caregivers that need support as we go through this, whether it's through adding the additional formal care or making sure that we feel prepared as that family caregiver. Crazy statistics up there, 41.8 million Americans provide unpaid care for an older adult. So that averages at least 24 hours a week of care. That is a part-time job. So just think about that. Another one, that's $470 billion of free labor. So you guys are truly working in probably a field. I see at least one nurse out there, Judy, I'm going to call you out. But most of you might not have that experience of what it means to be a caregiver. And here you are providing 24 hours of direct care to your loved one, whether it's emotional support, physical care support, or just their meals, logistics, all of that stuff is informal care that you are extending to somebody else in your circuit, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a close friend, that we don't often think about as being something that we're not prepared for. We're doing it out of love, we're doing it out of care, we're doing it because we know it's needed, but that doesn't always mean that we have the training and support to provide it in a way that creates longevity. And that's what we want to do, is create longevity in your ability to provide that care, like Rollin said, in the safety of the home and the comfort of the home by people that feel trusted and supported there. It's often that the informal care is being done by spouses, but we also find it being done by children. And as adult children, we often find ourselves being spread both ways as well. So not only are we caring for our parents, but we also might be caring for our children or our grandchildren. And so that does definitely create a space where we're feeling quite spread a little thin. And so we often forget about what our needs are in those moments when we're extending our care outward. And that's something personally that I think that we just are wanting to raise awareness for, is that it's okay if you feel burnt out. It's okay if you feel like, you can go to the next slide, if you feel like, oh my gosh, am I doing this well? Am I going to be able to continue to do this? These are normal questions that we need to ask, but often a natural byproduct of aging and especially caring for someone is going to be isolation and loneliness. And so without having the support, without coming to things like this, without entering into a state of vulnerability, we're not able to start accepting that care. And so 80% of caregivers, specifically with someone caring for someone with a cognitive decline like dementia or Alzheimer's, and the number is only about 60% if it's any chronic illness, but a caregiver, 80% of those are voicing burnout. And again, there then comes a guilt with feeling burnout, perhaps a shame, perhaps this other emotional toll of like, I want to be providing this care, but I'm so burnt out. So what do I do? And those are the things that we want to help walk through, but just even right here, I want to give the liberty to say, like, it's okay to feel those feelings. Often we push them down, we ignore them, we don't want to accept that help. But if we do, it creates longevity. And so this is why I'm just being transparent so that we can have that freedom in accepting the formal and the informal care that we might need. I'm such a downer, but I'm just going to share another kind of not so fun fact, which is 30 to 40% of caregivers will have serious illness or health complications due to the stress, often by providing care and neglecting our own care. I had a caregiver I walked alongside, and I asked them when the last time they went to their primary care physician for just their annual checkup, and it had been 6 years. And I was like, when was the last time you went to the doctor for your spouse? And she was like, 6 weeks ago. And I was like, do we see that there is just that juxtaposition of where the care is going? And it is hard, it's really hard. When that person needs to go to their primary, a neurologist, a urologist, a pain clinic, the pharmacy, any of those things, we're just on top of those appointments, and we're going to be quick to cancel our own. But if we continue to cancel and neglect our own care, who's left caring for the people that we are around? You might have heard the saying on an airplane, if any of you guys have traveled, that they say if there is going to be something, to grab your oxygen mask, place it on yourself before you help those around you. And this is going to be the same concept as we age and as we're caring for our loved one. We're not going to be able to care for them if we're not first caring for ourselves. And unfortunately, that's going to look different for each of them. So I'm not going to be able to come up here and be like, and to care for yourself, you need to do this, this, and this. It's going to look different. But that's why we provide these opportunities in our community, such as a church family, perhaps Evergreen Commons, things like that that can give you outlets to make sure that you're caring for yourself, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, physically. Those are the things that we want to look at. And also, if we need caregiver support, specific care is something that I'm going to be personally a little biased about because it is in my title of my position, but also because it can be something that provides such fruit that you're able to continue caring for your loved one. And so what we want to do is combat loneliness and combat feeling isolated as we're caring for someone. So with that, there are caregiver support groups in your community. There's even one held here. on the second Thursday of each month at 3 o'clock, just in the green room over at the other entrance. But it's a place where, as peers, if you find yourself walking alongside someone, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a sibling, even if it's something like, I'm just in charge of bringing them their groceries, I'm not doing any care, or I'm just in charge of organizing their schedule, that still can be something that we just want support to help with longevity. And finding a group of peers going through something similar can be something that provides education from experience. It provides friendships and relationships and helps us create a purpose outside of ourselves as now this care partner and caregiver. But even more specifically, there are education and workshops that can really equip us. The Evergreen Commons specifically, but then also others in our area, provide evidence-based workshops for caregivers. So this is going to be something where there's statistics and research gone into how do we create our informal caregivers, our family caregivers, to feel equipped and empowered to care for our loved ones across the board. So whether that's educating about chronic illnesses such as dementia and Alzheimer's, whether it's educating about the emotional aspect of what it means to care someone through grief and guilt and shame that might come with some of our walking alongside them through as we age and are we doing enough? Then we also have a class just about stress. Again, aging and specifically caregiving, a natural byproduct is going to be stress. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get rid of our stressors as easily, but we are going to be able to learn how to manage those things. And so those are the things that we want to think about. If you're in this informal setting, how do I continue on? How do I keep them at home? How do I have our desire be something that lasts? And it's through these education and workshops. And sometimes it's finding a counselor or a therapist in our area, or being honest with our doctors, setting up appointments before or after your loved one to say, hey, this is what's going on my end. So can you also see these things instead of just what's happening in their life and what's present for them? So that way we can continue to have this bigger picture, to make sure we're giving the holistic care for both our loved one and ourselves. And then community engagement. Again, isolation, I'll say it, it's something that happens. And so providing a space where we can be amongst others, sometimes completely separating ourselves from the role of caregiver. Those are going to be things that help us find purpose and kind of refill our tank. If you're continually having your cup of water, which is our energy levels, our ability to care, and we're pouring it out and it never gets filled back up, we're not going to be able to keep caring for our loved one. And so we want to make sure that we're filling our cup back up, and that's finding good people, people that can hold you accountable, but people that can encourage you, laugh with you, cry with you, or just be with you in this time as you're walking alongside your loved one. With that, there often comes a point where, as a caregiver, we think about the things that we're doing, and we notice, like, I don't know how much time there's left where my loved one can remain at home. And you've called Rollin, or you've come to the day center at Evergreen, or you've have other family supports coming in, but you're still like, I just don't know if I can keep doing this. And if you go to the next slide, that's kind of something we do want to touch on. We want to age in place if that's your desire, but there might come a time, and Rollin touched on this too, where it just might not be feasible for us to continue having our loved one live at home or ourselves live at home anymore. And these are just some of the things. People ask me in our groups and in our classes, like, how do I know when it's time to move my loved one? And I go, well, and then do a long pause, and because it's different. Again, it's not going to be like, hey, if your loved one was diagnosed with dementia at year 7, you're looking to move them. We could give rough guesstimates, we could do encouragement, but it really comes down to the fact that each individual with a chronic illness or aging is aging independently, and the person uniquely, and the person caring for them also has their own unique gifts, thresholds, and abilities. And so we want to look at it at that personal level, but at the broadest sense, these are the things we're going to look for when we're thinking, is it time for my loved one to be placed? And that might be safety concerns. If you aren't able to help your loved ones stay in their home because they're leaving, they're wandering, they have to go get the mail, but it just so happens to be 2 o'clock in the morning on a winter night, and no alarm is keeping them from getting out. Those are the things we're thinking about of, okay, it might not be feasible for me to continue to do this. not taking their medication, increased falls. There's always going to be steps and before that, and like Rollin said, we see people kind of preemptively move to security measures of a long-term care placement. There might be things where we rearrange our furniture, we add those locks, we do these things, but there's also times where that's just not enough. Another big thing is caregiver burnout. Physical and emotional exhaustion, impacts on your own health, increased stress and frustration. There comes a point where, again, we're each individual people, and if we find ourselves in that caregiver role, it might be that we just don't have that capability to continue, especially say if someone's not sleeping at night, you're not being rested. If you're not refueling your tank again, burnout's gonna come. And so we just wanna help you find ways to prevent burnout, but if it is there, you're not gonna be able to give your loved one the care that they deserve or that you want to give them. And then declining health and hygiene. Again, sometimes there comes a point in disease progression or aging that it's just hard for us or in-home agencies to be able to assist, although they can assist very far into that as well. Social isolation or withdrawal might be a reason. And then another bigger one that we often see is increased behavioral challenges. So increase in aggression, paranoia, sundowning, sleep disturbances, or just resistance to your care and supervision. How many of you guys know somebody living currently with dementia? Yeah, that's at least probably 30% of you, which is an accurate statistic. Like about 1 in 3 older adults will end up being diagnosed with some sort of cognitive decline if they're over the age of 80. So that is something to be mindful of. This increased behavioral challenges might be something that comes along with that. And again, we want to be knowledge is power, and we want to think about that. But it's not always something to anticipate if someone has dementia either. So we don't want to be super fearful, but it is something to be mindful of. And oftentimes, when someone's brain isn't able to function at the level or track logic or understand those things, when they're having a moment of behavioral challenges, perhaps aggression, or something like that, it's really hard to talk them out of it. And so that's what we start to see when we might need that assistance of just a safe and secure environment for somebody. So you can go to the next slide. We talked a lot about the formal and informal stuff. The big part of it is it can be overwhelming. If you're in it, you're kind of like head down in the trenches. If you're preemptive to it, maybe it might not be something that you ever need to experience, but if you do need to introduce the formal and the informal assistance, it can be a lot, but it's never too late to plan ahead. I think that that's something that both of us are very passionate about, of figuring out, like, I might not even need these services, but what's even out there? I might not even know if I want to do that or what to do that, but maybe I need to find out the costs. Maybe I need to know what's available. Do I have long-term care insurance? What deductibles do I meet? Things like that are things that we want to start thinking about so we can prepare ourselves that if we do hit that hurdle in our aging journey, that we're prepared and feel equipped to handle. Knowing what is out there and not using it is going to be better than needing to utilize it and not knowing what's out there. And so that's something that we want to be able to be here for you guys as active resources. But a simple new thing that Suzanne Visser will yell at me if I don't mention is something that's so community specific, which is the new Evergreen Commons Resource Hub online that correlates with our resource center. So next week there will be a little flyer for you guys that just has access to that website, but it's just evergreenhub.org, and it literally has every list and roster directory of any service towards older adults that you might need in Holland. So whether that is in-home agencies, perhaps it's counselors, perhaps it's people to help with our homes, home-delivered meals, any of those questions, it's probably on that resource hub. There's other places like 411 and A Place for Mom that are going to be broader and not so community specific as our resource hub, but that's going to be a great place to start. And then it even has access to people. If you're like, wait, I have a more specific question, or I have something like this, you can just type it right in there online and we'll help solve those problems for you. But first, asking those questions, seeking the information, that's going to empower us to continue thinking about, okay, what is ahead? And then next week, if you guys aren't planning on coming, I would encourage you, because it's going to be Hans Mulder from Cunningham Dolman to really talk about that financial piece. Roland talked about the cost effectiveness and efficiency and the differences in what that looks like, but he's going to be able to educate us on like, how do we even prepare for that? Or what does that look like to help make the life that you guys have lived so far and what you've earned and what you deserve, to make sure that you're able to, that correlates well with your finances and what care you might need ahead. And then also Steve Langland from Langland Sternberg Funeral Homes, just to talk about even what that looks like and what it can mean to prepay and all of that stuff. So they'll get into the nitty gritty of that, like other planning ahead aspects of things as well. But yeah, that's all Roland and I have for today, but we wanted to give you guys time for questions if you had any. Do you? Now I'm like staring y'all down. Yeah. Yes. So she asked if there's people that can come in the home overnight.
Yeah, of course. We actually have clients that we specifically just do overnights 7 nights a week. So that's not a problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not typically, I mean, every organization might be a little bit differently on how their price structures. Ours specifically doesn't have a surcharge for weekend or for overnight care in that capacity. But yeah, we do a lot with like transitional care too, just as like an example for overnight. We have people that might just get a knee replacement or a hip replacement, and they just say, look, I need someone to help me use the bathroom overnight for just 72 hours. And like, that's something that we can absolutely accommodate. And then we have people we've been with overnight 24/7, 365 for I think 3 years now, maybe almost 4 years now. So, you know, our approach is that hospitality nexus is into a clinical approach. And so, yes is the answer. What's your request? Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? I'm going to hang out. I'm sure you'll hang out a little bit longer. People want to have some one-on-one time or have anything specific or want to get some additional information. Yes, ma'am. Of course. Yeah, so we do a rigorous background check, FBI, all the above, transportation even. They, of course, go through a rigorous physical examination, drug testing, all those things. But we are also a company that hires predominantly people that are a CNA, that have a credentialed certificate that also comes with, you know, usually preferably multiple years of service and experience prior. And just to boot that we really get wonderful care staff is that we are a faith-based organization. So we have people that are missionally aligned with what we're trying to accomplish as a company, okay? Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Oh, thanks, Suzanne.
I think I remember seeing yours is a private pay and insurances may or may not cover.
Yeah, so predominantly we are private pay. For example, our organization is $38 per hour. Oftentimes, long-term care insurance will help supplement or pay for a good portion, if not the entirety. Everybody's policy is a little bit different when it comes to long-term care insurance, but that is something that we absolutely also accept. We do see people, you know, coming out of the woodwork with accident fund, some other insurances. I have seen just recently some unique policies through Blue Cross or Priority that did have some capacity of a threshold of minimal hours for home-based care. And I think insurance companies are realizing that utilizing home care is a significant savings in preventative care versus long-term care environments like skilled nursing and things like that. But yes, we are a private organization. Predominantly it is private pay funds, but yeah.
I'm going to let EJ turn this on. I'm Suzanne Visser, and I'm the director of our resource center at Evergreen. And I touched on this a little bit last week, but there are programs that will pay, that will assist in paying for home care. Mm-hmm. They're in Ottawa County, it's Senior Resources, and in Allegan County, it's the AAA of West Michigan. It's what's called the My Choice Medicaid Waiver Program, and you just have to medically and financially qualify for that program. So if in-home care is something that you really would like to pursue, but are not sure if you qualify for that, you can call our resource center. Melissa's trying to print off the evergreenhub.org So you can grab that when you leave. But also coming next week would be super helpful as well because Hans will be speaking to that a little bit. So
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. That was a
Yeah,
great
for
point.
sure.
I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
Oh, back there, Suzanne.
This is a new term for me, and you, maybe others know it, sundowning. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So how many of you guys have heard of the term sundowning? Yeah. So sundowning is correlated to a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's. And we use those words interchangeably. Dementia is the big umbrella. And then underneath it, you have Alzheimer's, maybe frontal temporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia. It's kind of all in there. And sundowning is one of the more common behavioral terms. And so a behavior is any action that is not necessarily part of their routine action and often causes, when we're using it, disruptances to their daily life. There can be good behaviors too, but when we talk about behaviors here, we're talking about those ones that often have disruptances. And sundowning is one where it's very common. It goes back to the term of back in the day when everyone was working on farms. And think of cows or think of just tending to that, where farmers don't really turn off. And so they often go out in the morning, do their daily chores, come in, eat dinner, and then where do they have to go? They have to go back out again to do the night chores for the farms, and they have this desire. So when we have dementia, it's often at night, so the term sundowning comes because the sun is going down, where they have this urge or this feeling that they need to be doing something, and so perhaps they try to leave the home. They have increased anger. They're asking where their parents are, but their parents have passed probably 20, 30 years ago. But it's that increase of behavior at night. You can see sundowning throughout the day, but it's just kind of to that point where their brain has worked as hard as it could to function at the level it could, and it hits kind of that peak, and then we see the confusion, the disturbances, the behaviors increase because their brain is so exhausted. And so that's kind of what sundowning is. It's really hard, again, to use logic as their logic is kind of deteriorated due to the disease progression to help them come out of that. But it is often why you guys offer in-home agencies or even a day center program so that there is staff that can assist in those times, but you offer evening care and night care to assist with some of those more difficult challenges.
A little bit about some of the caregiver classes that you offer that really...
Yeah, so we have one called the Savvy Caregiver, and I know some of people in this room might have taken it, but it is a dementia-specific class where it talks about every area kind of our brain and how it works, the areas of our thought and cognition. And then it will talk about how it works when we have just general aging, quote unquote, a normal brain, but then we talk about also what happens to that brain with the diagnosis of cognitive decline. And so we're going to talk about our perception, our judgment, our reasoning, how all of that is affected, but then as care partners, as caregivers, as friends and family, how we can walk alongside somebody that is starting to show those deficits in their life. And so those are the things that we want to equip and empower. So that's a good one just about that. Then we have a class for chronic illnesses about the physical, logistic part of things as well, called Powerful Tools. And then our Stress Busters class as well. So those are big ones. But we'll talk more in depth about those specific needs.
This might be out the, I always tell people I can always do it with my normal voice better than with my, outside the scope of the medical care, et cetera, and might be better served next week. But it's been my observation since entering this phase of life to peer group, friends and family, older and not that much older,
Yeah.
in that they are currently in the home in care, staying in home as long as you can is a great, obviously, if not from a financial way to go. It's in your comfort zone as opposed to moving to a whole new place. Mm-hmm. A lot of these places, in my subjective opinion, have no business aging in the facilities that they're at, whether that's a physical home or apartment complex or what have you. Mm-hmm. The in-home care doesn't have the luxury of being able to say, we're just spinning our wheels here based on where you're living. Having said that, do you have resources, Evergreen, whomever, as part of this whole network, where people can go, or, hey, I'm not sure I should be living in where I'm at anymore. Can someone come in and give me some tips, advice, blah, blah, blah? Does that all make sense?
Yeah, and probably Suzanne could probably answer it best if you want, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, I can do that. So we talked a little bit about that last week, and I will say that Melissa has done a great job. She was the brainchild behind this whole series. And the video from last week will be available on Christ Memorial's website once the series is finished. But yes, there are, and that is the same resource, Senior Resources is the AAA of Ottawa County, Muskegon, and the AAA of West Michigan is for Allegan County. So you can call them and talk to an options counselor, and if it's a friend that has said it's okay, it's very person-centered, so you can't call and say, my neighbor is at home and is unsafe, I don't think they should stay there. You can't make that referral. The person needs to be okay with someone making that referral, right? So if it's somebody that you think is unsafe, then you would call Adult Protective Services. There's centralized intake, and again, you would reach out to the Resource Center at Evergreen if you need that specific number. We usually like individuals who have experienced or see the situation that this person is in. So anyways, to answer your question, you're right. Home is where a lot of people want to stay, but sometimes it's not safe, and sometimes it's not affordable. Not every situation is ideal, so sometimes it's more appropriate for that person to go into some supportive care, but then finances become, as Roland said, facilities are very expensive, so that can be very overwhelming for individuals, even who feel comfortable and like they're able to pay their bills. But when you look at assisted living and some of the senior living communities, it is very expensive. But that's why it's really good just to talk with someone. Our resource center has resource coordinators that you can talk with over the phone. You can schedule an appointment. And we're completely unbiased. We have all of the organizations and service providers in this area that we partner with and that we know. Anchor In-Home is just one of many in-home care agencies that we really value. And I think, I think that's what's so great about this community is that we all have those trusted relationships. So does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Yeah, and there's like, even like PTs and OTs could come to your house through to the hospital. Like if you're thinking ahead of like, I do want to age here, but do I need to start having grab bars? Is there chair lifts? Can we widen door frames? So there are places, and Suzanne has lists of those, that even that type of stuff, if we want to think preemptively, there's definitely resources out there through options counselors, our resource center, even hospitals, things like that. Yeah.
So Atrio, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this, has an occupational therapist that you can privately pay to come in the home and look at your home for modifications.
Yeah.
We also, Melissa, I think was able to, I forgot it last week and I have it this week. It's a handout, universal design, and it's all about some of the home modifications that you can make in your home.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Any other, oh, yes, we'll take a couple more, and then we're still here. Yeah, we'll be here, but. Yeah.
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 Sure, that's an excellent question. That's also probably one of the reasons that I would say it stifled our growth, but when we put an application out for employment, we get somewhere around 100 applicants. We usually only end up with 2 to 3 people tops. Not only is it a phone interview, we then bring them in, and those interviews sometimes last 45 minutes to over an hour. we do reference checks, but that's what it's all about. And I articulate that a lot of the times. I say, I can get up here and talk about Anchor all day long, but the reality is what Anchor truly is that special individual that we hired that's coming to your home. And so between the credentialing I talked about before, as far as the background checks, the drug testing, coming with exceptional experience, checking those references, having certifications that are certainly higher than the norm. We have RN oversight, case management. So there's a lot of control over the care plan and the experience you have in the home. But I will just say too that, compared to like a Cook County, Illinois environment to Ottawa County, the people here just seem to have a little bit more of a moral integrity, I'll put it that way, good Midwestern values, but finding the right people is paramount. And we also have some pretty stringent policies on accountability. So, look, this isn't, and I tell people during the interviews, this isn't used cars, this isn't textiles. If you need professional experience, you can go to Meijer for a while or something, but we need bona fide professionals ready to hit the ground running and do an excellent job in your homes without training. We do have ongoing training, of course, because we're not perfect and we're always evolving, but to that extent, we bring people, and we do have a great training program on top of that, but we truly spend a predominant amount of time getting that cream of the crop and the best darn individuals out there. And that's, I don't know if that suffices your answer, but yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I think like Roland and Alyssa said, they will definitely stay afterwards, as will I. So I loved to see a lot of the same faces that we saw last week, and we just encourage you to come next week as well as we wrap up the series. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roland.
Such an honor, guys. Thanks for having us.